Radio. Radio, we got at least 2 occupants in here. No one's moving. Oh my God.
On July 31st, 2022, Mackenzie Shirilla, a spoiled and reckless teenager, decided to put her macabre plan into practice. The plan consisted of taking the life of her boyfriend Dominic Russo and her own life. However, a friend of Dominic's named Davion Flanagan, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, also ended up falling victim to Mackenzie. Mackenzie couldn't take her own life, but she took the lives of the 2 boys, who didn't stand a chance. In the following days, Mackenzie lived her life normally. She went to shows, parties, and continued to post several smiling photos on her social networks. But after a brief investigation by the police, the truth came out and Mackenzie was brought to justice. Mackenzie Shirilla was born on August 2, 2004, in a town called Strongsville. Strongsville is a city in the state of Ohio in the United States and has a population of just over 45,000 inhabitants. The city is considered very peaceful and a great place to raise a family. Mackenzie is the youngest daughter of the couple John Shirilla and Natalie Stevens, who have 2 other children. As the youngest daughter, Mackenzie has always been very spoiled by her family, and we know how that can go very wrong. Things that she did during her childhood and that needed some attention and reprimand, her parents turned a blind eye, and most of the time they rubbed her head. Because of this, as she grew up, Mackenzie developed a terrible personality and a sense that she could do whatever she wanted because in her head, there would be no consequences. When she reached adolescence, things went even further downhill. Mackenzie began using alcohol and drugs. At that time, it is not known whether her parents did not realize how dangerous things could get or whether they simply ignored it, thinking it was just a phase in their daughter's life. Like every teenager, Mackenzie spent hours on social media posting about her life. In many of the photos she posted, she was either drinking or smoking, and the titles of her posts were often provocative phrases. Furthermore, the girls' friendships were not the best, and soon she and these friends began to commit petty crimes, such as vandalism, teenage fights, and petty theft. Of course, this ended up drawing the attention of the authorities who went after the teenagers. But as the offenses were considered to be of a non-serious nature, they merely took a warning. Now I'm going to talk about another central figure in this case, Dominic Russo. Dominic was born on September 24, 2001, also in Strongsville. He was the son of the couple Frank and Christine Russo, who in addition to him had 6 children. Dominic was described as an average student at his school, but one who tried to excel at sport. It is said that the boy made friends with anyone and was well known both at school and in the city where he lived. His parents prioritized their children's education and were even strict on some issues so that their children wouldn't go down the wrong path. After finishing high school, Dominic was accepted into an Ohio university near Strongsville. He was accepted into the performing arts course. His goal was to one day become a renowned music producer. Those who knew Dominic said he would achieve this goal as he was very hardworking. Dominic and Mackenzie met when the girl was a senior in high school. The two went to a party where they had several mutual friends and ended up being introduced by those same friends. At this party, the two hooked up for the first time and then went out together other times. Shortly afterwards, they started dating and decided to meet each other's families. Mackenzie's parents were amazed by their daughter's choice. Dominic was already in college, was hardworking, responsible, and had a great future ahead of him. Dominic's parents didn't see much fun in Mackenzie. They even liked the girl, but there was something about her that kind of raised an alert in them. Dominic was very enchanted and in love with Mackenzie, so much so that he took the relationship more seriously than she did. He even started making future plans with her, such as marriage and starting a family. The plan was for them to get married as soon as Mackenzie turned 18. They also planned to move to a big city. Dominic considered New York, as there he would have more opportunities in his career as a music producer. However, despite all the happiness surrounding the couple and all the plans they were making together, Mackenzie began to behave strangely, and this was the prelude to something much worse. Mackenzie got angry at anything, and most of the time she was violent, going so far as to attack Dominic. Dominic tried to talk to the girl, but she didn't want to know. It was either her way or not at all. Mackenzie was very spoiled, and Dominic, no matter how much he tried to change her mind, he couldn't. With that, the boy decided that it was better for them to take a break, so that Mackenzie could think better about her actions. It is said that after hearing this from Dominic, Mackenzie became furious and said that if Dominic really walked away from her, she would end his life. But even though he was threatened by Mackenzie, Dominic decided to stay away from her. For him, this was the best decision until things calmed down. Because of this, in the following days, Mackenzie started calling Dominic several times from different numbers to curse him. She also sent messages on social media and Dominic's email. In some of these messages, Mackenzie apologized and said she loved him and wanted him to come back to her, but in other messages she offended and threatened him. Dominic didn't take his ex's threats seriously, even though Mackenzie emphasized that if he wasn't hers, he wouldn't be anyone else's. As time passed, Mackenzie's persecution and threats to Dominic ceased. With things calming down, Mackenzie looked for Dominic and apologized to him. She said that she had changed and was dedicating herself more to her studies. Dominic was surprised, as it really seemed like Mackenzie had improved. The girl then took advantage and asked Dominic for help in choosing a university to enter as soon as she finished high school. Dominic, who still liked Mackenzie, didn't think twice and said he would help her without any problems. As the days went by, the two met several times so that Dominic could help Mackenzie with enrolling at the university of her choice. It wasn't long before the two began to bond again, with Dominic asking Mackenzie out. As Dominic's family already knew the whole story about his relationship with Mackenzie, they said this was not a good idea. For them, Mackenzie was a spoiled and unstable girl, and the best thing Dominic could do was get away from her forever. However, as I already mentioned, Dominic still liked Mackenzie and believed they could still work out. Therefore, the boy did not listen to his family and decided to renew his relationship with the problematic girl. But while Dominic was happy, believing that things between him and Mackenzie were getting better, the girl had other plans. Mackenzie wanted to get revenge on Dominic. In her distorted mind, the boy should pay for leaving her, even if she knew it was her fault. Mackenzie began to devise a plan in which she would take Dominic's life as well as her own. She started thinking about a car accident. She had watched a movie in which there was a scene where a car fell into a cliff, and she was fascinated by that idea. Then she thought that accelerating the car and throwing it against a pole, tree, wall, or any structure strong enough to cause damage would be a good idea too. She even told some of her friends about her insane ideas, but none of them took her seriously because she had already talked about similar things in the past and had never done anything she said. Mackenzie believed that if she and Dominic passed away together in an accident, their story would become known across the country, and she kind of thought that was romantic. Two young people in love, at the beginning of their lives, whose fate is sealed by a tragic accident. This, in her mind, was something akin to Romeo and Juliet. On July 30th, 2022, Dominic and Mackenzie went to a party together. At that point, they had already rekindled their relationship, and practically everyone closest to the couple was already aware. They spent hours at the party where they had fun and chatted with countless friends. When it was time for the couple to leave, Dominic's friend named Davian Flanagan, 19, asked if he could catch a ride home with them. Dominic promptly replied yes, but Mackenzie immediately said no, as she had plans alone with Dominic. Even though Mackenzie refused the ride, Dominic insisted that they could take his friend home. So, in order not to arouse suspicion, Mackenzie said it was okay and agreed that Davian would leave with them in the car. Davian was a 19-year-old young man who dreamed of one day owning his own barber shop. He was the son of the couple Scott and Jaime Flanagan, who adopted him when he was just 8 years old, along with his two sisters, Davine and Dahlia. When they got into the car, the couple sat in the front seats, with Mackenzie at the wheel and Dominic in the passenger seat. Davian sat behind Dominic's bench. It was around 5:10 a.m. on July 31st, 2022, when the couple and their friend left the place where the party was taking place. Mackenzie drove the vehicle onto a road with little traffic that gives access to an industrial area where there was almost no one at that time. Upon reaching this road, the girl accelerated the vehicle as much as she could, and when the car was fast enough, she threw it against a brick wall. It is not known whether Dominic or Davian realized what was happening, whether they tried to stop Mackenzie or whether they thought it was just a joke by the girl, but the fact is that this collision was fatal for them. The area chosen by Mackenzie to cause the accident is an area with little movement. As a result, no one witnessed when the vehicle in which the three young people were traveling collided with the brick wall. But a woman who, according to sources, lives nearby heard a very loud noise, which she said sounded like metal hitting something very solid. This woman then left her house and went to the location where the car was. As he approached, he saw that there were 3 people inside the vehicle, but only Mackenzie, the driver, showed vital signs. The woman immediately called emergency services and asked for help. When paramedics arrived, they noticed that Mackenzie's legs were trapped beneath what was left of the vehicle's dashboard. The girl was released a short time later and taken unconscious to the hospital. Dominic Russo and his friend Davian Flanagan were not so lucky. According to sources, they died a few minutes after the collision. Both boys had multiple injuries to their bodies, resulting in several broken bones. According to authorities, at the time of the collision, the vehicle's speedometer was showing 99 miles per hour. This is somewhat surreal, because even at that speed, Mackenzie managed to survive, and she was in the part of the vehicle that is usually most affected in a collision, which is the driver's seat. The worst thing is the fact that Mackenzie wanted to take her own life, and she was the one who caused everything. But ironically, she stayed alive, and the 2 boys didn't. At the hospital, it was discovered by the medical team that Mackenzie had suffered several fractures and damage to her internal organs. When the doctors who attended to her saw the photos of what the vehicle she was in looked like, they said it was a miracle that she survived. Blood tests carried out on Mackenzie revealed that she had consumed alcohol and used drugs. This made doctors and authorities alike think that was why she collided with the car. After undergoing some surgeries and regaining consciousness, Mackenzie began crying and confessed to a doctor what she had done. She told everything about what happened that day. However, the doctor didn't take the things she was saying very seriously and thought that it was just the delusion of someone who had been through a traumatic situation. When Mackenzie got better and the police were able to speak to her to find out what had happened that day and what had caused the accident, the girl did not want to say what she had told the doctors and just told the police that she didn't remember almost anything. However, during the investigation, police officers had access to security camera footage from the streets Mackenzie drove the vehicle on that day before the collision. In these images, it is possible to see the girl driving the vehicle at the permitted speed on the road, and then she suddenly turns onto a road that gives access to an industrial area. When checking the images recorded days before by these same cameras, the police discovered that Mackenzie had driven past the location several times in her car, as if she were reconnaissance of the area. At this point, the police began to suspect the girl and theorized that perhaps she had planned everything, something that, as we know, was exactly what she did. After being released from the hospital, Mackenzie continued with her life normally as if nothing had happened, showing no remorse. She even attended shows and participated in a Halloween party all dressed up, where she took several photos smiling alongside her friends. Everything indicated that Mackenzie didn't care about the 2 lives she had taken. Dominic Russo's funeral took place in early August 2022 at St. Joseph's Church. He was later buried in Strongsville Cemetery. The farewell ceremony was attended by hundreds of people, including family, friends, and college classmates. Davian Flanagan's funeral took place at Igreja da Graça on August 15, 2022. He was later buried in Strongsville Cemetery. The farewell ceremony was attended by hundreds of people, including family and friends. I couldn't find information on whether Mackenzie was at either funeral. Until now, as far as we know, Dominic and Davian's families did not suspect that Mackenzie had caused the accident on purpose. That changed in early November 2022, after authorities were able to gather enough evidence that proved Mackenzie caused the accident on purpose. Mackenzie Shirilla was then arrested and accused of having planned and committed the crime. According to authorities, from the moment she was arrested, Mackenzie appeared extremely arrogant and indifferent to the consequences she would face. In her mind, as she was a minor at the time of the crime, her sentence would not be high. In fact, she believed that she would not even be imprisoned, but unfortunately for her, that was not what happened. Between the months of July and August 2023, the trial of Mackenzie Shirilla took place. As you can already imagine, the case had a huge impact, and many people were watching to see the outcome of this story. The families of the victims, Dominic and Davion, were present in court. In a statement, they said they really wanted Mackenzie to tell the truth about what happened on the day of the accident that killed the two boys. They were very distressed because Mackenzie still maintained that she didn't remember what had happened that day. During the trial, the prosecution presented several pieces of evidence that Mackenzie had planned the crime. Among this evidence were videos from security cameras installed on the streets where she drove her vehicle days before to recognize the location. The prosecution also presented witnesses who stated that weeks before the accident, Mackenzie had said that she was going to throw the vehicle with Dominic into a cliff or against a wall. The defense, on the other hand, used the same argument that Mackenzie had been using since leaving the hospital, which was that she didn't remember anything. The defense even presented in court a text message that Mackenzie sent to Dominic's mother. In this message, she says that she asked her therapist why she didn't remember anything, while the therapist said that she had gone through a huge trauma and that this could have made her forget the events of that day. In the message, Mackenzie says she wanted to be hypnotized so she could remember, because she didn't remember what happened, and it was killing her. Well, these allegations were obviously not convincing, and Mackenzie Shirilla was found guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 2 life sentences that she could serve simultaneously, and for a minimum of 15 years, without the possibility of parole in that time. In other words, even if she was sentenced to 2 sentences, Mackenzie will be able to serve these 2 sentences at the same time, as it was 15 years for each one. Instead of serving both sentences together, which would be 30 years, she will be able to serve both at the same time, reducing her sentence to 15 years. I did some research, and it was due to the fact that she was a minor at the time she committed the crime. And despite the seriousness of the crime she committed, this was the maximum sentence that could be applied to her. After the trial ended, Dominic's father, Frank Russo, said he did not want Mackenzie to have been sentenced to life in prison. According to him, despite being devastated by the loss of his son, he didn't think it was fair that Mackenzie spent the rest of her life in prison, as it would ruin her life and wouldn't make him feel better. Frank ended his statement by saying that this was all very sad. Davion's parents, Scott and Jamie Flanagan, said they accepted Mackenzie's conviction and hoped she learned something during her time in prison. Currently, Mackenzie Shirilla is in a women's prison in the state of Ohio, where she will spend many years.